Today we are going to talk about stress transformation. Before we can discuss stress transformation, we need to first look at some basics. So we're going to use Mechanics of Materials 10th edition by R.C. Hibbeler as reference, our textbook for this topic, and this is where that topic. We will start with this section, chapter number 1. We will start with the stress, brief introduction to stress and components of stress, and then we will be coming to our actual topic, which is stress transformation. So just a quick revision. Let me start with this figure to illustrate what we are doing over here. So let me show you the same in the OneNote. In this figure, you can see that we have considered a body subjected to, say, these F1, F2, F3 and F4 external forces. And now in order to determine the internal loadings developed in this body, we need to consider a cut section over here. For example, if you are interested in finding the internal loadings at this location, so we will consider a plane cutting through this location, and then we will be having two parts of the body, two segments of the body, maybe the lower segment and the upper segment. So let's draw free body diagram for the lower segment. Then first you will show these external forces acting, F1, F2 as it is. You will draw the body, show the external forces, and then here we will be showing the internal loadings. Now in this discussion, we are not talking about any special types of internal stresses. I mean, we are not talking about whether these are normal stresses, whether they are shear stresses. We're generally saying that there must be some internal loading developed in order to maintain equilibrium, in order to equilibrate the effect of these external forces F1 and F2. Now, without going into the exact shape, into how the internal stresses will be exactly distributed over this area, we do know that there will be two resultants that must be produced. One is a resultant force and the other is a resultant moment. All right, a resultant force and a resultant moment. These are necessary. These internal forces Fr and internal moment Mr are necessary to equilibrate the effect of F1 and F2. In fact, these are the forces that are being provided by the upper part of the body, upper segment of the body, in order to keep this lower segment in equilibrium. So these are the internal loadings that will be developed over here on this plane can be shown as one force, one resultant force, and one resultant moment. Now this Fr, the resultant force, and the resultant moment Mr, Fr and Mr, you can resolve them into components. For example, Fr can be resolved into a component. Fr can be resolved into a component normal to the cross section, and another component tangential or parallel to the cross section. So similarly, we can resolve this resultant moment vector into two components. One perpendicular to the cross section, normal to the cross section, and the other tangential to the cross section. Now, as you know, that this normal component of as far as the components of this Fr are concerned, the normal component is called normal force, and the component which is tangential to the cross section is called shear force. Now, normal forces are developed whenever there is a tendency for these two segments, whenever there is a tendency of pulling between these two segments or pushing between these two segments, and shear force is always developed when there is a tendency of sliding between these two segments, one segment tending to slide with respect to the other. And as far as this, the components of MR are concerned, we have two components again. Torsional moment M is the component normal to the cross section. All right, it tends to twist the segment, one segment with respect to the other. And this bending moment vector is the component of MR, which is tangential or parallel to the cross section. It is contained within the cross section, and it tends to bend the segment with respect to the other. So we have force has two components, normal force and shear force, and moment has two components, torsional moment or torque, and bending moment, or simply sometimes we refer this to moment. Now, so this was a general case of loading where forces could lie in any plane. These forces were not lying in single plane. So this was a general case of loading. In a special case, if these forces F1, F2, and F3 and F4, and all these forces, if all of them are lying in one cross-sectional plane, this is one planar object and subjected to these forces, all of them contained in a single plane. So if you consider a section in order to know the internal forces acting on this cross section and draw free body diagram of the left segment, then this is how the free body diagram would look like. These are the two forces F1 and F2 acting as it is as the external forces, and there must be a force and a moment developed in order to maintain equilibrium to equilibrate these F1 and F2 forces. Now again, if we resolve that resulting force and moment, this time there will be only two components. Again, for force we will have a component normal to the cross section and a component tangential to the cross section, so normal force and shear force. And we will have only one component for the bending moment, because all of these forces are in the same plane, so they will not be able to twist the section. So of course they can cause bending, but they cannot twist. So in that case, there will be only bending moment being produced. You see, for twisting, it is necessary that, for example, some force are acting, somewhere into the screen or out of the screen, at some distance. So in this particular case, when coplanar loadings are being applied, there are only these components, as you can see. And you have been very familiar with how to calculate normal force, how to calculate shear force, and how to calculate bending moment. There are separate chapters on these these internal loadings, normal, shear, and bending moment. And I hope you have been through these in detail. So you can, for example, if you set up if you consider some ref coordinate system, X directed along this direction, Y directed along this direction, then N could be determined by considering summation of all forces acting in the X direction. V could be determined by considering summation of all forces in the Y direction, and M could be determined, for example, by checking moments of all forces about O. In this way, the V and N will be passing through O, and they will not be contributing to they will not be appearing in the summation of moment equation. And this is sometimes a way to simplify the procedure. So next we're going to discuss stress. So you see, we discussed in our previous section that if you remember that body, this is the free body diagram of the lower segment of that body. See this body, we are just reproducing this figure over here, and see, this is the same body. So we have said that FR and MR are in fact the resultant of internal loadings. These are the resultant resultants of the internal loadings that are developed. We don't know we haven't yet talked about the exact shape of distribution of those internal loadings, but we have shown their resultants only. One is a force and one is a moment. Now, next we are going to discuss the concept of stress. So if you consider, you see, this is the whole sectioned area, whole of sectioned area. Now, if in this whole sectioned area, you consider a small area delta A lying in the same plane. I mean, delta A is just a small part of this whole cross section. Then, and you consider a smaller and smaller area, limiting so that delta A approaches to 0, and you consider a small force delta F contributed by this area delta A. All these areas together, all the complete area will give you this resultant Fr and Mr. So each area is giving us a portion of the total force. Let the portion contributed by delta A be represented by delta F. So delta F is force acting over a small area delta A. Keep in mind this delta F and also this Fr and Mr, these are all internal loadings, internal forces. So delta F is this force acting over delta A. Now this delta F definitely has some unique direction, has some unique magnitude, but we can still resolve it into components. We can resolve in 3-dimension system x, y, and z. X, y, and z. We can resolve delta F into 3 components. Delta Fx directed along x-axis, delta Fy directed along y-axis, and delta Fz directed along z-axis. So the actual force delta F contributed by delta A area is now resolved into 3 components: delta Fx, delta Fy, and delta Fz. So now we're going to define stress. So normal stress, you see, the normal stress sigma z. We are calling it sigma z because it is along z-axis. If you want to give it a complete name, you could give it a complete name of sigma z, but we often call it just sigma z. In this case, first subscript denotes the area on which it is acting, or the plane on which it is acting, and the second subscript denotes the direction of the stress. On the direction of the stress. When we say the first subscript denotes a plane, it actually represents normal to the plane. So we have considered this plane, and a part of it is delta A. So delta A has a normal directed along z-axis. That's why we are calling this plane as z-plane. So sigma zz would be the complete representation, where first z represents the plane on which it is acting, z-plane, and this second z represents direction of the stress. It is in z direction. You see, it is in z direction. So we will define this sigma z as the limiting value of delta Fz divided by delta A when delta A approaches to 0. So delta Fz divided by delta A, it gives you delta Z when you consider the limiting values. So this is how we define normal stress. So you can see that Similarly, we can also define shear stress. So shear stress would be defined in this case. We represent shear stress by tau, and let me talk about two subscripts over here. The first subscript stands for the plane on which it is acting. So again, we have the same plane in consideration, z plane, and next we will be placing a subscript to talk about the direction of the force. So we have tau Cx. This x represents the direction in which this stress is acting. It will be defined as the limiting value when delta A tends to 0 of this fraction delta Fx, the x component, delta Fx divided by delta A. So limiting value of delta Fx over delta A when delta A is so small that it approaches to 0, then tau Zx, then this is how we define tau Zx. So this is the same x that you see over here, and Z is the plane on which we are considering the stress. And we have another component of shear stress over here also, that would be, again, you can say that would be tau Z, and let me show you the other subscript by another color, equal to limiting value of delta Fy over delta A when delta A approaches to 0. So this is the same y as you see over here. The direction of the force is same as the direction of the stress, and this z represents the plane on which this shear stress is acting. So we had shown delta Fc, delta Fx, delta Fy, and here we can see the stresses sigma z, tau Zx, tau Zy. So these are the three components of stress, sigma z, tau Zx, and tau Zy, acting on z plane, on this element, on this part of the cross section delta A. So now we have discussed these stresses acting on this plane. We could consider other cutting planes. For example, if now you further cut a plane such that the normal to the plane is along y-axis, then this can be exposed. This cross section will be imposed. This section will be exposed, and if we consider another section, we cut another section perpendicular, normal to the x-axis, then these internal loadings will be exposed, acting on this cross section, acting on this section. So we will be having. So let's see what additional stresses would be exposed when you have obtained this, when you have cut a plane such that its normal is along y-axis. When you have done this type of cutting, then on this part of the segment, the shaded one, which is shown over here, there will be again three types of components. One will be normal to this, which we will call as sigma y. Sigma yy or simply sigma y, which is normal stress, of course, in the y direction, and we will have again two components of shear stress, one acting in this z direction and the other acting in the x direction. And since in all cases we have considered a plane normal to y-axis, we have considered y plane, that's why you see y as the first subscript in these stresses. So if when you expose, when you further have a cut such that we expose this plane, this x plane, then again if you consider a differential area delta A shown over here, then again we will have three components, sigma x, tau xz, and tau xy. You see, in this case we have, in all cases, the first subscript is x, and this is sigma x, x are simply sigma x. So because we are considering stresses acting on x plane, so that's why the first subscript in all these cases is x, and the second subscript denotes the direction in which the stresses are acting. This is acting in z direction, this is acting in y direction. So far we have considered three planes. One was this plane which was the z plane, and we had shown that there will be three components of stresses, sigma z, tau zx, and tau zy, which we have discussed over here also, will be acting on this z plane. Similarly, on y plane we have three components of stresses, and then on x plane we have discussed we have again three components of stress. So each plane has three components of stress, one normal and two shear stresses. So let me write this down for you. Each plane has three components of stresses, components of stress, one normal, which will be acting per normal or perpendicular to that plane, and two shear, one normal stress and two shear stresses. So how many planes can we consider in total? So far we have considered three planes like x plane, y plane, and z plane, and we can see that these planes are forming a cube. We can see three faces of the cube at this stage, but of course the total number of faces are 6. So just as you have positive z plane, this top one, you will have a negative z plane just below. I mean the top face is positive z face, and the bottom one would be negative z. So similarly on each for each plane we have a plane opposite to it. So in total we have 6 planes. So if we count in total, so since we can have 6 planes, and each plane has got 3 components, or should I write them separately? Each plane consists of one normal stress and 2. This plus sign is not, algebraic summation. I'm just telling you that we have one normal stress and 2 shear stress components. So it means in total we have 6 into 1, 6 normal stresses in total, and 6 into 2, 12 shear stresses are stress components. Better to say stress components. So normal stress components and shear stress components. Although we need not, although some of them would be simply established by equilibrium. For example, if stress acting on, let's say, this phase is sigma x, then naturally for equilibrium, the stress acting on the opposite phase, which will be the negative x phase, will also be by magnitude, it will be sigma x, and of course if this is tensile, the other will also be tensile. And very similarly, if you keep counting down, if this is tau xy acting on this plane, on the opposite plane we will have another force just opposite to this force but equal in magnitude. So by equilibrium, we know that we need not find all these 18 components, because, so let's list them down. These are, so so if we consider the fact that we need, if we know half of these, if we know three of them, the rest of the three are established by equilibrium. So if you know sigma x, you see, if you know sigma x, sigma y, and sigma z, then on the opposite faces we will have same stresses by magnitude. So all we need to know is sigma x, sigma y, and z acting on one of on the x, y, and z planes. And over here we also need, although there are total 12 shear stress components, but in fact they are in 6 pairs. So we need to know 6 shear stresses, and those are, starting with z, we will have tau zx, then tau zy, these are acting on z axis, and then similarly tau x y, and then tau x z, these are acting on x planes. And similarly then we have tau yx and tau yz. All right, so if we know these 6 components, and these 3 components, we will be able to know the rest by requirement of equilibrium. I hope I'm making it clear. Now, so you need to know these 3 and these 6. But again, if you see this tau, by now we have only used the condition of equilibrium to reduce 6 normal stress components to 3 and 12 shear stress components to 6. So we need to know 3 normal stresses in total and 6 shear stresses in total. But there is another phenomenon called complementary shear stresses. Complementary shear stresses. And what does this complementary shear stress mean? The stress is, let me elaborate this with the help of a figure. Now, as we have said, we need to know these 3 normal stress components, sigma x, sigma y, and sigma z. These are the 3 normal stress components that you need to know. Let me circle them with maybe a blue line, blue color. Sorry, this is the y-axis. This one. So these are those normal stress components. So I have shown the normal stress components in blue. Over here also I have encircled them in blue, and the shear stress components in red. So as I said before, in total you have got 6 normal stress components and 12 shear stress components. But by requirement of equilibrium, if this is sigma y, then this line, this dimmed line opposite to sigma y, is also in fact representing a stress which is equal in magnitude to sigma y, but of course in opposite direction. So we concluded that based on this, we only need to know 3 stress components, sigma x, sigma y, and sigma z, and the rest of the 3 will be established by equilibrium. Now we are talking about shear stresses. We said that there are 12 shear stress components in total, because we have 2 stress components, shear stress components on each face, and there are 6 faces, so we have 12 shear stress components. But fortunately, we need to know only 6 of them because the rest of the 6 will be established by equilibrium. For example, if this is tau yz acting over here in upward direction, then we must have this force, this stress exactly equal to tau yz, of course acting in the opposite direction. So we only need to know this one, and the rest this will be established by equilibrium. So we concluded that we need to know 6 shear stress components, and now we are going to further simplify the problem by pointing out a common relationship between pairs of shear stresses. The concept that we have already talked about in our previous classes is the concept of complementary shear stresses. Complementary shear stresses. These are the shear stresses acting on adjacent faces. This, for example, this tau xy acting in this direction is a complementary shear stress of tau yx acting in this direction. So tau xy and tau yx are the complementary shear stresses. These are the shear stresses acting on adjacent faces. Look, this is one face and it has an adjacent face over here. So we have tau yx acting here and we have a tau xy acting over here. We have proved in our previous classes that these complementary shear stresses are equal in magnitude. So using the relationship between complementary shear stresses, we can further say that since tau xy is complementary to tau yx, therefore, okay, and similarly tau, so let's try to reduce, look, this is tau xy and this is tau yx, and we have said these are complementary to each other. So we need to know the magnitude of one, and the other magnitude will become known, and the direction will be dictated by equilibrium requirements. So tau xy equal to tau yx. Similarly, tau xz is equal to tau zx. So this is tau xz over here, and this is tau zx. So tau xz, this tau xz over here, you can see tau xz is complementary to tau zx. So you have seen that on each phase we had 2 shear stress components, and this one had, so you know, this face is adjacent to this face as well as this face. On this face, with this face, it has a complementary shear stress of tau xy, tau yx, and this is also adjacent to this face. So we must have another complementary shear stress acting over here. So we have tau xz and tau zx as complementary shear stresses, pair of complementary shear stresses acting over here. So we need to know magnitude of one, the other magnitude will become automatically known because those will be equal and the direction will be dictated by equilibrium. And finally, we know that tau yz is complementary to tau zy. Tau yz is over here, this stress, and this is tau zy, complementary to tau yz. You can go back and see where we discussed the proof that complementary shear stresses are equal. Go to the topic go to your lecture notes and see the topic when we were discussing shear stresses in beams. So you must find this discussion of complementary shear stresses in your notes. So just to save time, I'm not repeating it. So, but just to, I'll have a quick recap of this in our next discussion. But for now, we have proved that we have stated that tau xy is equal to tau yx. So it means out of this total 6, we need to know only these three are, these three. So if you can find out these 3, the other 3 will become automatically known. So this further reduces the problem that we need to know only three shear stress components, tau xy, tau xz, and tau yz, and the complete state of stress will become known. So to summarize, in case of 3D state of stress, general state of stress, we need to know sigma x, sigma y, and sigma z. These three normal stresses, and we need to know three shear stress components. For example, tau xy, tau xz, and tau yz. All right. So we need to know, if we know these three stress components, three normal stress components and three shear stress components, we will be able to completely define the three-dimensional state of stress at certain point. This, keep in mind that we have, in this discussion, we were talking about, we have established the complete state of stress at point, at this point. The point is in the center of this cube. So when we talk about stress at a point, we actually are referring to the state of, we are actually referring to the components of stress acting on sides of the cube element surrounding that point. I would like to repeat this. When we say stress at a point, we actually are considering a cubic element surrounding that point, and on the faces of that cubic element, we want to know the components of stress. In total, we have, as discussed, 6 plus 12 components, and then we discussed we have 3 plus 6, and then we discussed that we actually need to know these 3 plus 3 normal stress components and 3 shear stress components, and the state of stress at that point will be completely specified, will be completely defined. It will be uniquely defined. All right. So the general state of stress is completely defined by these components, which we are showing over here in the diagram. So this diagram is representing a general state of stress, three-dimensional state of stress, in which there will be stresses acting in all three directions, x, y, and z. So this was the discussion on general state of stress. Now we are ready to discuss stress transformation, and this is the actual topic that we are supposed to cover. So we will be starting with 9.1 plane stress transformation. So let's discuss this. We have just discussed that the general state of stress, our three-dimensional state of stress, is represented by sigma x, can be completely is represented by this element, and you see the stress components acting on its faces, and we have just had a discussion on how to simplify the analysis. We said that we need to find sigma x, sigma y, and sigma z, and three shear stress components, for example, tau xy, tau xz, and tau yz, and the rest will be established by equilibrium. And some of the shear stresses are complementary, so we can establish them. So the general state is, yes, completely defined in this way, but sometimes the loading is applied such that the resulting stresses all lie in a single plane, and we can perform the analysis in a single plane. For example, if you consider this body, the same element as you have over here, but in this case, if it is subjected only to these stresses, sigma x, sigma y, sigma x, sigma y, and this shear stress, then you can see that all these arrows, sigma x, sigma y, sigma x, sigma y, and these four arrows representing shear stresses, all of them lie in a single plane. So if you consider a plane, for example, at mid-height of this cube, and you will see that all these vectors lie in a single plane. So we can perform the analysis So these will be, in fact, this will be a state of plane stress. So in case of a plane stress, the stresses produced can be analyzed in a single plane, and the material is said to be in a state of plane stress. So as you see, we have sigma x, sigma y, and then we have these shear components. Now let's see, we discussed that in general state of stress, we have, in general state of stress, we discussed in general state of stress, we need to specify, we need to know sigma x, sigma y, and sigma z, and we said we need to know tau xy, tau xy, tau xz, and tau yz, any three unique components. So tau xy, tau xz, and tau yz, we need to know these components in order to completely define the general state of stress at a point. In case of plane stress, this reduces to a rather simpler situation. In case of plane stress, if we assume that the stresses acting are in, for example, xy plane, this will be x. If this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, then the plane containing all these vectors would be xy plane. Z is in the upward or downward direction. So we have x-axis, y-axis, and then z-axis acting upward. So these stresses would be, in this case, they are in xy plane. In some other case, we can have stresses acting in any other, maybe xz plane or yz plane, but we have considered over here that the stresses are acting in the xy plane. So you see that in case of a plane stress, the components that you need to know are sigma x, sigma y. Why? Because in case of a plane stress, you see this is the z phase, and there is no force acting along z direction. So all forces are acting either in x direction or y direction. In all these cases, you see none of the forces were shown, none of the stresses or their corresponding forces are acting in the z direction. All of them are contained in the xy plane. So sigma z is, in case of a plane stress, we have two normal stress components, and the third component here, it is sigma z, is equal to 0. And then if the stresses are all in the xy plane, then of course the shear stress that will be non-zero would be tau xy. I mean, we only need to know tau xy because we have seen that there is no force, no stress acting in z direction. And you see, these are, in these two components, you see these are acting in z direction. One is on x plane, the other is on y plane, but they are all, both of them are directed in z plane. So what we have found is that these are 0 in case of plane stress. So this is a mathematical way to define plane stresses. So we can change the color maybe. This tau xz will become 0 and tau yz will also become 0. So the force, these three were acting in the z direction. So these three are acting in z direction. In case of a plane stress, the stresses are all acting in one plane, in this case the xy plane. So the components along z are 0. So what we need to, so what is the summary? The summary is that in case of plane stress, the state of plane stress is completely defined if you know sigma x, sigma y, and tau x, y. All right, so you need to know two normal stress components. The state of plane stress is completely defined. So completely defined. So these are required to define the state of plane stress at a point. So if at a point we have state of plane stress, then the state of stress can be completely defined by these three stress components: sigma x, sigma y, and tau x, y. In this particular case, we are assuming, I'm repeating, we are assuming that we are taking that the stresses along z are 0, and all the stresses are, all the non-zero stresses are acting in the xy plane. So some are directed along x, some are directed along y, but they are all in the xy plane. In order to quickly draw this type of element, in our next discussion, we will draw only a three-dimensional view of this element. Of course, this is a 3D view. In order to draw a two-dimensional view, I need to tell you that where I'm standing to look at the element. So if I stand at the top, looking at this beam from the top, looking at it from the top, I'll be able to see these arrows, sigma x. I'm standing over here at the top, sigma x, sigma y, and these four arrows. So I'm going to show them in the form of a two-dimensional view. This is the top view that you can see. This is the top view, and these are the stresses that you can see from the top. So this actually refers to this element, but to just to short the drawing process, we will be using this element. So whenever we are talking about this element, we are actually talking about this element, but this is just a drawing simplification. So this sigma x is acting on this x face, because stress has to act on certain area. So you cannot see that area in this plane, because its one dimension is this, but the other dimension is perpendicular to the screen. So this is how we will be showing the state of plane stress. Now, as far as these four arrows of shear stresses are concerned, we have all labeled them as tau x, y. Why? Because look, this is tau x. Look at this is tau x, y, and for equilibrium, we must have. This corresponds to ये जो arrow है, this arrow corresponds to this arrow over here. All right, let me show you over here. This arrow is here. Sorry, this arrow tau xy is being shown over here, all right, in the 3D view, in this 2D view, all right. So you should now see where we are standing actually. So this is our right side. We are standing at the top. This is our right side. This is our left side, and these are the forward and backward side. So this is the right, this is the left, and then forward and backward sides. So this is tau xy. Now, if this is tau xy, if this magnitude is tau xy, these magnitude on the opposite face by equilibrium will be tau xy. So that's why we are showing this one, and this must be in opposite direction. Now you have established the direction of this one. We're looking at this direction. So you need to know the direction of this, and then you can fix the direction of this, which will be opposite. Now once you have established these two directions, let me show you on a separate page, separate figure. if you know this star xy, if you know this star xy, then of course the rest, let me change the color for this. If you know this basic one, star xy, if you know this one, you can establish the magnitude and direction of the others using the equilibrium and complementary shear stress component. This must be directed in the opposite direction for equilibrium. And now if you see, subjected to these forces alone, the element is not in equilibrium. In fact, they have a tendency to rotate the element in this direction. So there must be some counteracting pair of loading that can counter this moment tendency. So the countering moment tendency must be in this direction. So that will be produced if you have a pair of complementary shear stresses acting in these directions. See, now these black arrows are producing moment in this direction. This one could be represented black. So this red and blue are trying to rotate the element in this direction. All right, in this direction, and the black ones are trying to rotate in the opposite direction, and they are making sure that the section moment equilibrium is ensured. So all you need to know was this tau xy. Once you know this, these can be established. One quick tip is draw this first and then draw this one opposite to it. Now draw two arrows joining the heads of the previous one. For example, this will join the head of this one, and this will join the head of the other one. Just a quick tip in drawing. Otherwise, the concept is what I've already demonstrated. So this is what we have to find: sigma x, sigma y, and tau x. I mean, this is what will be completely defining the state of plane stress at a point. So now with the introduction to plane stress, we are ready to discuss the transformation of plane stress. Before we discuss transformation of stress, in this case we are discussing transformation of plane stress, let me give you an example of transformation. For example, if I have a vector, this vector, all right, and I ask you to find the components of this vector, maybe rectangular components. So you have several choices to show those components. For example, you could show those components acting maybe in this direction. Let's dot the line to show that these are components and not new forces. Maybe you can show them in this way. All right. Yeah, this way. So if you call these axes as x and y, for example, if this was, for example, vector f, then this would be called fx, and this would be called, fy. Now, you were able to resolve f into components, fx and fy. The principle that you applied is that fx, the vector fx, and fy should add up to give us the same vector, original vector f. This is what the basic concept is. If you add up this fx and fy, you end up with the same resultant original vector f. Now, some other student, some other person would resolve into components maybe using different set of x's. Maybe somebody else would like to resolve them into components in some other orientation. Maybe somebody would like to resolve them in this direction along these axes. Maybe somebody would like to know the components in these directions. in this case, we will have, if we name these directions, this new set of axes as, the earlier we had x and y axis, maybe you can call them as x prime and y prime axis. All right. So in that case, you will be having again vector fx prime and vector fy prime. Let me change the color because this looks a bit difficult to figure out. Now again, the principle is that this vector fx prime and fy prime should end up, if you sum them up, you should end up the same vector. So you could have vectors like, the components like fx prime and fy prime, and as far as their sum is equal to f, this is also correct. So actually we have just one vector and we could determine its components in any set of axes, maybe xy axis, maybe x prime y prime axis, maybe any other axis, any set of axes. So we could represent f in, we could represent vector f maybe in xy components or maybe in x prime y prime components. They are all equivalent. What I mean to say is these two components are equivalent to these two components. All right. So whether you represent f as sum of fx plus fy, or you represented fx prime plus fy prime, you are representing the same f as, in components in different orientations. So it's just changing the orientations that you are considering. The given force is same. Just to, this is not our topic, but I want to relate it to what you already can easily understand. This was the transformation of force. You have been calling it resolution of vector or resolution of force into components. But if you know the components in certain set of axes, you know the components in, you know the components of f in xy system, you know the components in fy system, and if I ask you to transform these components into another system, fx prime and fy prime, tell me the components with respect to x prime, y prime direction, then you are actually transforming. This is transformation of components. But right now we are talking about transformation of vector, components of a vector, components of vector. This is transformation. Knowing the components in one coordinate system and transforming them into another coordinate system, making sure that the new set of components is equivalent to the previous set of components. They both tell the same vector. They both end up giving up the same resultant vector. The same principle, but at a bigger scale, is going to be used in case of stress transformation. Stress transformation is a bit more difficult compared to vector transformation because a vector can have in two dimensions. A vector could have two components, fx and fy, or fx prime and fy prime, or any other two set of components. But in 3D, it could go to a maximum of 3 components. But stress needs to be completely defined. Stress can be completely defined by at least by you need to know, state of stress is completely defined by 6 components. Compared to a vector which has in 3 dimension, a vector can be completely defined by 3 components, fx, fy, and fz, or maybe fx prime, fy prime, and fz prime. But stress in 3 dimension requires knowing 3 components of the stress, sigma x, sigma y, sigma z, and these three shear stress components. In case of two dimension, a vector is completely defined by two components, as you can see over here. And if you want to specify the the state of plane stress, you need to know at least three components: sigma x, sigma y, or tau xy. Or if you have another set of coordinate like x prime and y prime, you need to know sigma x prime, sigma y prime, and tau x prime, y prime. So I hope this is a good introduction to the concept of transformation. Now we're going to discuss, we are coming back to our topic, and we're going to discuss that. Now we're going to discuss plane stress transformation. What does plane stress transformation actually mean? Knowing the components in one coordinate system, x, y, the component sigma x, sigma y, and tau xy. So knowing sigma x, sigma y, and tau xy, how can we calculate? Now knowing the components of stress with respect to one coordinate system, x, y, knowing sigma x, sigma y, and tau xy in case of plane stress, and transforming them to another set of axes, say x prime and y prime axis, and transforming them are finding the components of stress in another set of system, x prime, y prime system. That is finding sigma x prime, sigma y prime, and tau x prime, y prime. Knowing this and calculating this, just as in case of force, knowing this and calculating this. All right, knowing the components in one coordinate system and transforming them into components in another coordinate system. So in case of stress, in case of a plane stress, it is completely defined by two normal stress components and one shear stress component, sigma x, sigma y, and tau xy. So the new set of system will also have these components, sigma x prime, sigma y prime, and tau x prime, y prime. Keep in mind that just as in case of force, you have still the same force whether you represent it in these components, xy system, or you represent it in x prime, y prime system. The state of the vector is the same. The original state of vector is the same. So we have one state of stress, and we could represent it in xy system or in x prime system. This is not a new set of, this is not a new state of stress. This is the same state of stress, shown in different coordinate system, x prime and y prime. So in that case, of course, the element in this x prime, y prime coordinate system, the element will be slightly differently oriented than the original coordinate system, because sigma x prime would be acting on x prime phase, sigma y prime would be acting on y prime phase, and tau x prime, y prime would be acting on x prime phase in the y prime direction. All these are, in fact, right now we are showing everything in the positive direction, and this, x prime in sigma x prime along positive x prime, sigma y prime along positive y prime, and similarly tau x prime, y prime acting on positive x prime phase and acting in the positive y prime direction. So all of these are right now in the positive direction. So when you are asked to find sigma x, when you are given sigma x, sigma y, and tau xy, and asked to determine sigma x prime, sigma y prime, and tau x prime, y prime, there is a question. The question is, how is the new coordinate system? How is the new coordinate system oriented with respect to the previous coordinate system? So we could show the orientation of the new coordinate system, for example, by knowing the angle of this new x prime axis with the original x axis. So this theta angle, which is the angle of x prime with respect to the x axis, this is, what we need to know. At what theta, the new coordinate system is oriented. So you need to know at what theta you are talking about these stresses. I mean, this angle must be known, because for each angle you will have a different set of x prime, y prime axis, and the answers for these will be different. So answers for these will naturally be dependent upon theta, because theta will be dependent upon theta. So I mean, if you change theta value, you have different set of x prime, y prime axis, and of course these stresses will also be different. So the problem statement is, now you are given sigma x, sigma y, and tau xy. The state of stress has been established in this coordinate system xy, and you are asked to determine the components of stress in another coordinate system oriented theta degree from the original coordinate system. So you need to know these components in the x prime, y prime axis. So this is the problem statement, and let's see the procedure now. Let me show you this procedure with the help of 3D figures. So I'm using a software. This is a cube drawn over here. So we will be using, so if you, this was the original element that we considered, and this is the cutting plane that you can see. We are going to cut a plane. I mean, cut this segment into this original element into two segments. One will be this lower segment, this segment, and one will be this upper segment. So we will be drawing forces acting on this lower segment. So this lower segment, you can see, it will have, you know, it will have forces acting on this inclined area. The inclined area is in fact the area, I mean, see area on this plane जो इसके साथ intersect कर रही है, जो अंदर से गुजर के आ रही है, वो जो inclined area होगा इस plane में contained area, ठीक, वो area, उस area पे जो forces act करेंगी, वो basically ये अगर हमारा x प्राइम की डायरेक्शन है, हमारी ये वाली, ये x डायरेक्शन, और ये अगर x प्राइम की डायरेक्शन है परपेंडिकुलर नॉर्मल टू दिस प्लेन, कटिंग प्लेन, तो ये हमें x प्राइम के ऊपर हमें सिग्मा x प्राइम और टा x प्राइम y प्राइम इसके ऊपर एक्ट कर रहे होंगे, इस प्लेन के ऊपर, इस इंक्लाइंड प्लेन के ऊपर। और इसके अलावा इसमें कौन सी फोर्सेस एक्ट कर रही होंगी, क्योंकि इसमें यहाँ सिग्मा x एक्ट कर रहा है, यहाँ भी उसके अगेंस्ट सिग्मा x है, इसी तरह यहाँ टा xy है, और यहाँ उसके अपोजिट एक शेयर फोर्स है, तो यहाँ सिग्मा x है, यहाँ सिग्मा x है। हम चूंकि लोअर सेगमेंट की फ्री बॉडी डायग्राम ड्रॉ करने जा रहे हैं, तो हम इस फेस पे, ये जो फेस है, ये वाला फेस, इस फेस के ऊपर जो सिग्मा x लग रहा है, वो सिग्मा x हम कन्वर्ट करेंगे इनटू फोर्स, यानी उसको हम ड्रॉ करेंगे। I'm trying to show you what forces would be acting on the free body diagram of this lower segment. The two forces that we discussed earlier are sigma x prime assumed in the outward direction, in the tensile direction, and sigma and tau x prime y prime acting along this plane. And the other forces that would be acting are, you know, the force acting in the x direction, see, on this face, this face. So let me show you the same in another way. This was the original element, the blue, and this red is the cutting plane. So we are going to draw the free body diagram of this lower segment. So this lower segment has been separated. This is that inclined area, let's call it delta A, this area, delta A. Then we are going to show forces acting on this as sigma x prime and tau x prime y prime, and other forces which are acting on the remaining faces. So let's see how it works.